The story doesn't begin on Earth. It begins far above the clouds, in a place no human was ever meant to reach. A hidden world floats in silence, beautiful from a distance, but deadly the moment you step into it. And yet a small group of warriors climbed their way up there, risking everything for a mission they barely understood. The moment they arrived, something felt wrong. The air was too still, too heavy. Then, suddenly, a herd of white mountain goats peacefully grazing just seconds ago scattered in pure terror as if they sensed something unseen. Kale noticed it immediately. His instinct screamed danger. Without wasting a second, he dropped low behind a rock, holding his breath, trying to disappear into the silence. And then, the ground trembled. A shadow passed over him, slow, massive, alive. Kale slowly lifted his eyes, and what he saw made his blood freeze. A leg thicker than a tree trunk stepped into view. The skin looked like cracked stone, ancient and unstoppable. Before anyone could react, the creature bent down, grabbed one of the goats, and swallowed it whole. No hesitation, no mercy, just raw, terrifying hunger. Kale's heart pounded so loud he thought the creature might hear it. Nearby, one of the soldiers made a fatal mistake. Just for a moment, he turned to look, and in that world, one moment was enough. The giant inhaled deeply, sniffing the air, and locked onto him instantly. The soldier panicked. He ran, but running was useless. You cannot outrun something that sees you as prey. The giant ripped an entire tree from the ground like it was nothing and hurled it forward. In seconds, the man was gone. Silence returned, but it was worse now, heavier. The giant stepped closer, curious, almost calm. It picked up another soldier, examining him like a toy. That's when the commander attacked. A flash of steel cut through the air, and his blade drove deep into the giant's ankle. The creature roared, a sound so powerful it felt like the sky itself was breaking apart. It turned violently, and with a single movement sent the commander flying across the ground like he weighed nothing. Then, almost casually, it pulled the sword from its flesh, grabbed both men, and walked away, as if nothing had happened. Kale didn't move. He couldn't, because in that moment, one truth hit him harder than anything else. This world was never meant for humans. And the worst part? This was only the beginning. Just days earlier, Kale had made a choice that now felt like a curse. He had traded something valuable for a small pouch of strange seeds. They looked ordinary, dry, lifeless, completely harmless. But everything changed the night the storm arrived. Rain poured from the sky, soaking the earth, and one of those seeds touched water. Within seconds, the ground began to crack. The house shook violently as something beneath it started growing, fast, too fast. Before anyone could react, a massive vine burst through the floor, tearing apart wood and stone as it shot upward into the sky. Inside the collapsing house, a young noble girl was trapped. She tried to run, but the ground shifted beneath her. Kale rushed forward to save her, but the force of the growing vine threw him outside. The structure broke apart as the vine continued rising higher and higher, piercing through the clouds. Desperate, Kale grabbed onto it and began climbing. Wind roared around him. His hands slipped. His body trembled. But he didn't stop, because somewhere above, she was still alive. After what felt like an endless climb, he finally reached the top, and what he saw stole the air from his lungs. A world above the sky. Floating mountains covered in mist, waterfalls falling into nothingness, and in the distance, shadows moving. In that moment, Kale realized the truth behind the old legends. This wasn't just a myth. This place was real, and it was alive. But what he didn't know, what no one knew, was that this world was already under control, not by giants, but by someone far more dangerous, someone human, someone who had already turned this sky world into a kingdom of fear. Because the real danger was not the giants, it was the man who learned how to control them. Kale didn't understand it at first, but the deeper he moved into that sky world, the more he realized something terrifying. This place wasn't wild, it was controlled. The giants weren't acting randomly, they were moving with purpose, like soldiers following orders. And that meant only one thing: someone was leading them. As Kale followed the massive footprints carved into the ground, he began to notice signs: broken branches, disturbed stones, and something even worse: human footprints, fresh. That's when his chest tightened. He wasn't alone up here. Someone else had reached this world before him and survived. Meanwhile, far ahead, the girl he came to save was no longer running. She was captured, locked inside a massive iron cage hanging between two towering stone pillars. Around her stood creatures twice the size of houses, their eyes cold, their movements slow but powerful. They didn't speak like humans, but they understood fear, and she could feel it watching her from every direction. Then, suddenly, the ground trembled again, not from a giant this time, but from something far more unsettling. Footsteps. Human footsteps. A man stepped forward. Not a giant, not a creature. A human. But there was something wrong with him. His clothes were torn, but his posture was confident. His eyes didn't show fear, they showed control. In his hand, he held something strange, a glowing band of metal wrapped around his arm, pulsing faintly like it was alive. The moment he stepped forward, the giants lowered their heads, not in confusion, but in obedience. Kale, watching from a distance, felt a chill run down his spine. This man wasn't surviving here. He was ruling it. The man walked toward the cage slowly, studying the girl like she was just another object. Then he smiled, a cold, calculated smile. "You're not as important as you think, but you're useful." His voice was calm, too calm. This wasn't a rescue mission anymore. This had become something else, something far more dangerous. Back in the forest, Kale was still moving, staying low, avoiding open ground. Every step mattered, every sound could mean death. Then suddenly, a low noise snapped him out of his thoughts, a low growl behind him. He turned slowly and saw one of the smaller giants staring directly at him. For a moment, everything froze. Then the creature lunged. Kale reacted instantly, diving to the side as the ground shattered where he had been standing. He didn't think, he ran. Branches whipped against his face, rocks tore at his boots. The giant followed, each step closing the distance. Kale's breathing became heavy, his vision blurred, but he didn't stop, because stopping meant death. Just as the creature reached out to grab him, Kale spotted something ahead, a narrow cliff path. Without slowing down, he jumped onto it, barely catching his balance as stones crumbled beneath his feet. The giant tried to follow, but it was too large. Its weight cracked the edge, and for a second, it hesitated. That second saved Kale's life. He didn't look back. Hours later, exhausted and barely standing, Kale reached a higher ridge, and that's when he saw it. A fortress. Not made by giants, made by humans, but twisted. Massive chains hung from the walls, fire burned in controlled pits, and at the center, the cage. The girl was still there, alive, but surrounded. Kale's fists clenched. He had finally found her. But now, the truth was clear. This wasn't about escaping anymore. This was about fighting something far worse than monsters, because the real enemy was human. And just when Kale thought things couldn't get worse, he saw something that made his heart stop. The man controlling the giants was holding another seed, and this time he wasn't trying to escape the sky world. He was planning to bring the giants down to Earth. Kale stood frozen, watching from the shadows as everything finally made sense. The man controlling the giants wasn't just surviving in that sky world, he was building an army. And now, with another glowing seed in his hand, his plan was clear. He wasn't going to stay above the clouds, he was going to bring the giants down to Earth. Kale's chest tightened as he realized what that meant. This wasn't just about saving one life anymore. This was about stopping a war before it even began. Inside the fortress, the girl remained trapped, her strength fading but her eyes still sharp. She had been watching, learning, waiting. When the man stepped closer again, she didn't show fear this time. Instead, she studied him, and that's when she noticed it. The glowing band wrapped around his arm wasn't just a weapon, it was control. Every time it pulsed, the giants reacted. Their movements slowed, their heads lowered. It wasn't loyalty, it was forced obedience. And if that thing could be destroyed, the giants might be free. Far below the ridge, Kale moved again, quiet, focused. Every step now had purpose. He wasn't running anymore, he was hunting. As he circled the fortress, he searched for a way inside, something small, something the giants wouldn't notice, and then he found it. A broken section of the outer wall, barely wide enough for a man to slip through. Without hesitation, he moved in. Inside, the air felt different, heavier, controlled. Fires burned in perfect lines. Chains hung from the walls like warnings. This wasn't chaos. This was order, built on fear. Kale moved from shadow to shadow until he reached the central chamber, and then he saw her, alive. His grip tightened. He had made it, but between him and her stood giants, and above them, the man. At that exact moment, something unexpected happened. One of the giants hesitated. It twitched, like it was resisting something. The glowing band flickered. The control was weakening. Kale saw his chance. Without thinking, he moved. Fast, silent, deadly. He climbed the structure above the cage, pulling himself up using chains and broken stone. His hands bled, his muscles burned, but he didn't stop. Below him, the man raised the glowing seed toward the sky, preparing to activate it. The giants around him began to shift, responding to the power. The ground itself seemed to vibrate. Kale reached the top. One move, that's all he had. He jumped. Time slowed. The man turned. Too late. Kale crashed into him, slamming him to the ground. The glowing band flickered wildly as it hit the stone. The giants roared, not in anger, but in confusion. The control was breaking. The man tried to reach for the band, but Kale grabbed it first. For a moment, their eyes locked. Not fear, not rage, but realization. The man smiled. "You don't understand what you're doing." Kale didn't answer. He ripped the band off. Everything changed. The giants stopped. Then they looked up. For the first time, they were free, and they were angry. The man stood slowly, laughing under his breath. "You just made them worse," he said quietly. And in that moment, Kale realized something terrifying. He was right. The giants were no longer controlled, but they weren't calm either. Years of forced obedience, broken in seconds. Their rage exploded. The fortress began to collapse. Chains snapped, walls cracked, fire spread. Kale rushed toward the cage, breaking the lock as fast as he could. The girl stumbled out, weak but determined. "We don't have time," she said, grabbing his arm. Behind them, the giants were tearing everything apart. This world was falling. They ran, not away from the giants, but toward the edge, because there was only one way out, the vine. As they reached the edge of the sky world, the ground shook violently. One of the giants stepped forward, towering over them. For a moment, it raised its hand, and Kale thought it was over, but then it stopped. Its eyes softened. Not all of them were monsters. Some of them were just controlled. The giant stepped back, letting them go. Kale and the girl grabbed the vine and began their descent. Wind tore past them as they slid down, faster and faster. Above them, the sky world crumbled. The man stood at the edge, watching them fall, a faint smile still on his face. And then the vine began to break. Kale tightened his grip, pulling the girl closer as pieces of the vine snapped apart around them. They were falling too fast now. The ground rushed toward them like a wave. At the last second, he pushed her away from the falling debris, and everything went black. When Kale opened his eyes, he was back on Earth. The sky was quiet, the vine gone. Beside him, she was alive, safe. But as Kale looked up one last time, through the clouds, he felt it. Something was still there, watching, waiting, because some worlds don't close so easily.